I have published more than 200 books, and altogether, the book sale is about 9 million copies.
Wow.
Your gift shows up when you are serious about doing something. I always try to think like I have no money. So if I have no money, what would I do?
So how did your daughter inspire you to start writing books?
So I think when I was, when she was like 2 or 3 at the time, I had this strange dream. In my dream, she was already like a teenager, like 17 or 18. She was chewing gum and piercing everywhere and like a heavy metal kind of girl. And she was very rebellious, but kind of like the future reminds me that she's my daughter. And she says, "Hey, daddy, very rebellious. You may have little money, but you're so pathetic because you're not helping anybody. You're just helping yourself." And then, like, I woke up and she was sleeping right here. And then that was so real. And then, oh, I have to make sure in like 15 years, I have to make sure that she will not become like that. And then she will not say something like that. I want to be respected by her, is how I felt. So that's what I prayed. That's almost 22 years ago.
Wow. And how is she today?
Oh, she's a singer. Her name is Stella Venus. She's putting up a lot of YouTube videos now. So she's a professional singer.
I love it. I love it. So I heard in a podcast that you didn't know that you had the gift of writing. So how did that start? How did you discover that gift?
So I always tell people your gift shows up when you are serious about doing something. So I was more eager to share what I knew about money and happiness. And then I realized that I was writing so much without my knowledge because I could write all day, a few days in a row. I was never tired. But in my entire life, I never wrote anything. So I was so surprised. It shocked me that I could write, but I didn't know if my writing is good or not. So I showed my little essays, a few pages of essay to my most positive friend because I couldn't take the negative feedback, right? So, and he said, of course, "Wow, that's great, Ken. This is amazing." I thought he is my best buddy, so he would say anything good, right? But I had enough courage to show it to my other friends, and they seemed to be like impressed, which shocked me too. And I started to distribute my essays. I stapled it. And then whenever I had a chance, like a lunch, a gathering, I was very happy to share. And I got many requests. Those days, just I got faxes for requests. And then just they wanted to read my essays. Like, wow, people, are you serious? You want to read my essays? And I was giving away more. And I got so many requests. So that's how I sort of started as an author.
That's amazing. Shankar, do you have a question? Because I have 100.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe some people who watch this don't necessarily know all of your books,
Yes.
but one of them is this one, Happy Money.
Yeah, I have
Is
it
that
here.
is that your most sold book? More than 7 million copies?
No, I think that sold about 300,000 or 400,000 copies.
Okay.
But I have published more than 200 books, and altogether, the book sale is about 9 million copies.
That's
Wow.
amazing.
Yeah,
And
sold many books.
one aspect that I really remember is when you shared about how you went about getting the book known, not only in your country, but obviously worldwide. Could you reiterate that a little bit? Because that was really insightful to me.
So I had this vision of helping people. But until about 4 years ago, I didn't have the nerve to do it outside of Japan. And I was very happy. I didn't want to go travel that far. So I just concentrated on work for Japanese people. but I think it's 2017 or so. Janet Atwood, who is a creator of a passion test, came to Japan. And she said, Ken, I think you gotta get out of Japan and just start teaching outside of Japan. Like, no, 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 no. I don't have English. I have no intention. But she said, come on, you gotta do it. And she invited me to this group of writers, which is started by Jack Canfield, Michael Beckwith, Lisa Nichols, John Gray, and those people, who are the main big stars in Secret. Joe Vitale, Dr. Joe Vitale is there as well. And I was so happy to discover that there are so many people who encouraged me to keep writing about what I do. And then a couple of years later, I published this book called Happy Money, which became an international phenomena. So it's out in now 34 languages and 54 or 5 countries now.
I've read this maybe like 18 months ago, and I love the concept. Like, I want to always be a business where people feel happy when they pay us versus when instead of it being like a bill, like, oh, I don't want to pay. Could you explain for people that have never heard the difference, like unhappy money or happy money? What is happy money?
So happy money is money that makes you smile when you receive it. I always talk about like your grandparents send you $10 in the envelope with a birthday card saying, "Happy birthday, grandson! You can buy anything you want." And with this money, like, grandpa, you can't buy so much with $10 these days. But it brings you so much smile and your heart opens. That is happy money. And on the other hand, most of us are in the flow of unhappy money, which makes you feel squeezed when you receive a check or just look at the online bank account, or like when you pay bills, like, "Ooh, I don't want to pay. I don't want to pay taxes, or I don't know if I can just make both ends meet." So that brings you fear, frustration, and that kind of money is unhappy money.
If someone is in a state of unhappy money, how can they start to change that?
It's very simple, because it doesn't really matter how much money you make or how much money you have. It's about your attitude. Your attitude toward money is a happy one and full of appreciation. You'd probably appreciate the money coming in because if you are freelance consultant or coach or anything, your clients or customers chose you out of tens of thousands of other competitors who are doing similar things as you do. So you can appreciate them for trusting you, choosing you to pay the money, precious money to you. So you can start feeling like, oh, wow, this is amazing. Thank you so much for choosing me, trusting me, and give the money. And then the money is in my bank account. So like you feel the trust and this almost like love and friendship and generosity. You put it in your heart. And then when you pay bills, you just receive something. People think like your bank account is going lower when you pay bills and when you pay money. But when you're paying something, you are doing it in exchange for something. Like when you pay bills, you use electricity for the last month. When you pay at the restaurant, you ate a meal and then somebody served you. So instead of like feeling like, "Ooh, I don't want to pay," you can start thinking and appreciating, wow, thank you so much for this internet, electricity, and otherwise I'll never be able to talk to you. You are exactly on the other side of the planet, and it's almost like the only thing we can do is hug, but
Right.
you're still right there. So wow, it's only like this much money that I can talk with anybody in the world. That's so amazing. So this is really worth the money. So if your attitude is full of appreciation, your unhappy money becomes happy money.
I love that. In several interviews, you talk about invisible assets,
Mm-hmm.
especially if your net worth is less than 300,000. And I think that I always say that the number one currency in business is trust. So
Yes.
business becomes so effortless the more people trust you at scale, which a part of that is content, a part of that is client delivery, a part of that is just doing good in the world.
Mm.
So, what are the invisible assets that people should focus on to build that trust?
I think when I think about my life, I've been doing this for 22 years. I have had the trust of 9 million people paying me just 10 or 15 or $20 or $30 for the book. And I have hundreds of thousands of people who have attended my seminars. So, and many of them come back repeatedly. And I think that means a lot to me. That means that they enjoyed it, they appreciate it, and they're coming back. So I always want to do more, give more. And the way I started my career is I started giving away my booklet for free. I was so excited to share what I knew about happiness and money. So I was talking about the little essays, right? I printed them out and started giving them away for free. And by the time I gave away 100,000 copies, a publisher called me, and then I became an author. So since then, I always focused on giving, sharing what I know about money. So still 80 to 90% of what I do it for free. But it's okay because the other 10% or 15% has been paying me so well. So I just focus on giving and sharing. That has been creating trust in me. I'm not doing this for money, even though I have made a lot of money, but I didn't put it my first priority. And people know that. People know that I'm a giver. So once you establish that, and I'm sure you both of you have established that in the past, that's why people love you and follow you.
Yeah. What are some, for someone that doesn't know how to build that trust, like they may need friendships and, just how do they even start those things? What are those invisible assets that they should focus on?
I think keeping promises is one thing. Like when you say, I'll text you, you have to text him or text
Yeah.
her. I'll give you a call, you have to call. And little promises, here and there, like time and money. And the little thing that you said you're going to do it, you should do it. And also like it's a promise with yourself. If you keep breaking your promises, you cannot trust yourself. So if you just love to do something for yourself and other people, that could be a great motivation.
And I think one of the things you mentioned on a podcast is like if you take someone out to lunch, like building those friendships in advance and
Yes.
just giving. It really is almost like a bank account where instead of just thinking of taking, you just give, give, give. So if you're ever in a bad situation,
Mhm.
you have friends.
Yes, and one of my friends said, "I don't have many friends. Ken, what can I do? But I want to become an author and speaker like you." So I said, "I have a great idea for you. I don't know if you're going to do it or not, but I'll give you this idea anyway. Why don't you start 1,000 friends project?" I asked him to take anybody, strangers, out for lunch, and he started it. It took him like 2 years until he reached that 1,000 people lunch. Sometimes he started with 3 people, 5 people. So he started in Osaka, Kyoto, Tokyo, and other big cities, and he was going around Japan. And one time he did with 20 people, 30 people. And after about 1,000 people, he started this interesting lecture series, like appreciating 1,000 people event. So he sent out an email saying like, thank you so much for being part of my take out 1,000 friends for lunch project. And then a few hundred people came to his seminar.
Wow.
And then later on, he became a published author. So it's because he just followed a simple advice: take strangers for lunch.
I love that. As I'm talking to you, you could have a book on just building friendships. I don't know if you know, but in America, there is a lot of adults, they don't even have one good friend statistically. So there is this epidemic of loneliness and of adults not knowing how to make friends.
Mm-hmm.
And without friends, if you ever get in a bad situation, you don't have anyone to fall back on.
Making friends is almost like a lost art of relationships.
Yeah.
When you think of your childhood, you didn't have to work to make friends. He or she happens to sit right next to you, or like your house was the same direction, after school, like a little thing, like
Uh-huh.
you have this bonding.
And you're
So
like, will you be my friend? And they're like, yes.
yes, it was kind of weird at the time, right? Like, oh yeah, can I call you my friend? It's
Yeah.
like, if what if she says no? Like what if he says no? But like friendship is something you have to nurture. And I think it's the same thing with your customers and clients too. So all the successful people I know, they treat their customers and clients like the family members or the friends. If you want to be an entrepreneur, once you want to start your own thing, you have to find your own tribe. To do that, you have to put out a smoke signal like a Native American person. People see the smoke, like, oh, yeah, Shannon tribe. Yes, that's mine, my tribe. And then people come and show up on your social media.
But a question I had for you,
Mm-hmm.
when you compare what you know from Japan to the United States, what are the biggest differences in the relationship to money as far as you can tell?
Now I realize that money is more taboo in America. America is a country of capitalism. So I thought people openly talk about it.
No.
But like a while ago, I attended my high school alumni, club. And then after 30 years of graduation, we casually talk about how much money we make. And then we just think, oh, I make this amount and I make this amount. Like, come on. Okay, the drinks are on you. And, but congratulations, we kind of congratulated the guy who just was making a lot of money. He was kind of embarrassed, like, oh, okay, I have to pay for these losers, and then we just had so much fun. But in America, if you ask your high school buddy, like, hey, how much money did you make last year? Like, he would be definitely shocked, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, it's almost never enough, but a lot of people, that is the case. Like they're just super stressed,
Yes, but it's a cultural thing. Probably
It
you don't
is.
know. Because in America, people love to talk about sexual issues, like they're so open. Like, so if your Japanese friend asks you about how much money you made last year, you can ask him about his sexual life. And then he feels the same way.
That's funny. It is cultural too, because a lot of Americans, they live above their means,
Mhm.
just to buy the fancy cars. But on the flip side, I heard like what you were saying when you came to America, that people were generous, and I think that is true too. There's
Yes, yeah.
there's a lot of people in America that will just help others, and there's a lot of very successful people that will mentor you if they see that you're aligned with your path. If they see that you're going to
Yes.
become someone, they'll really help you get there.
Yes, yes. I spent entire year, 1 year, almost 36 years ago in America. I relied on people's kindness. I wanted to try out my luck. My mentor challenged me. I asked him when I was 19, like, what would be the hardest thing I can do? So, because I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and he said with a big smile, like a mischievous smile, do you really want to do this challenge? And he said, yeah, of course. And he said, why don't you be in a situation that you have to surrender? Surrendering is the key to success. I didn't get it at the time. I'm sure you too, both of you know how to surrender, because you can work so hard, but sometimes the last one piece is like surrender. You stay vulnerable. So the best way is to depend on people's kindness, which I did. So I asked total stranger, and once I became a good friend, I asked him or her to introduce me to their friends who are living in the town that I want to go. So I didn't spend any money for the entire life since I was 19 to 20. And I slept on the couch of somebody, and I didn't know when is my next meal or my next bed, but I lived with a happy smile for 1 year. That's why I'm not afraid of money or bankruptcy, because I
Mhm.
know if I know how to be dependent or vulnerable, total surrender, I can live. So that was a very good lesson. So I forever appreciate American people for generosity.
Yeah, I love that. Shankar, how's it different in Europe?
I think it is very similar in that you're being taught that talking about money is definitely not something to be brought out in public, definitely not asking what someone earns. And I feel that that has a lot of its origins in how we are raised as children. We're not supposed to ask questions around the family finances. And then that leads a lot into when you are an adult to avoid that talk, and then you don't get financial education in the schooling system. That's actually an interesting question. Your book is actually a lot about financial education. I suppose that's missing a little bit in Japan too in the schooling system. I'm not sure.
Yes, definitely. My father is very unique. He was a successful tax accountant. So he wanted to give me financial education from early age. So I was born and brought up in a very, very unique environment. And when I was a teenager, I was so surprised that all my friends didn't know anything about money, you
Yeah.
know. And I studied investing when I was 20. So that's why I could retire at the age 29. So, financial independence is very important for me because after achieving financial independence, the rest of my life, I get to do whatever I want. I love helping people. It's because I have enough financial background, and then I don't have to be dependent on some companies or institutions. So I can say whatever I want, whenever I want. I have total freedom in terms of speech. A lot of people feel like I cannot say this to this person or to this group, to my clients, because they're bringing me bread and butter. So the importance of financial education is like a must, because a lot of people want money. As much as they want money, they hate money. So it's, come on, money. Oh, no, 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 please don't come too close. So like for money, like, should I get close to you or not?
Yeah. What are some of the lessons you taught your daughter? So my daughter is 7.
Mhm.
What are some things that maybe you would suggest to teach kids about money in
Yeah.
a
So
fun way?
yes, I started teaching my daughter when she was like 3, 4, 5, and I always told her money is an invisible angel.
Ah.
So when money comes in, I say, "Can you hear the bell ringing? Like angels are ringing bells, like happy money coming in, happy money coming in, da 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 da, da," like a musical, right? Thing. And then I could see angels clapping, like just fireworks, like Ken, congratulations, new money coming in. And when
Mhm.
I spend money, I always think to these money angels, listen to me. Thank you so much for staying with us, and bless everybody. And then don't take too long, but come back to me with lots of you guys, lots of friends, and then just release them. So the angels kind of like start flying and just blessing everybody. So that's the image I taught my daughter. So she thinks money is helping so many people, and including yourself. So a lot of people associate money with evil, devilish, cold, mean, violent thing. But money can be such a beautiful energy.
Yeah, I agree. A good question to ask you is how do you choose your mentors?
Oh, that's a good one. I wrote a book, How to Find a Mentor.
Okay.
It became a national bestseller a few years ago. The key is find the happy mentor, happy person. And I used to be mentored by a great aggressive businessman who wasn't somebody that I could respect. But I wanted him to teach me about business because of his great success at the time. So I try to learn about him, and I asked his secretary how he is, and she looked puzzled. I don't know, I'm very new. And I looked around and other people, and I asked the same questions. No, I just came in like a few weeks ago. So a lot of people come in and go. So nobody knew much about him. We knew that he was divorced. He doesn't have friends, but he's very successful with business. So if you have a mentor like that, you definitely have no family, no friends, and all your secretaries keep leaving you. So I think the most important thing is find a happy person. And then if he or she has a beautiful knowledge about it, life experiences, you can learn from them.
Sometimes when you accumulate money in your life, it changes you. How do you prevent that from happening?
I always try to think like I have no money. So if I have no money, what would I do? Or if I don't have to think of money, what would I do? Those are the two questions I ask myself. Because a little money just makes you a boring person. I have a friend who made about a few $1 million and he retired and do nothing and he became like a soulless person. He was such a passionate guy, but after making a few millions, he became such a boring person. He enjoys golfing, but I have nothing in common to talk about. So I think you should find something that gives you motivation and inspiration. And inspiration is really the engine of your life. And if you try to make that monetary motivation, life is not fun anymore. So you have to find something that inspires you so much that you just wake up from bed and just start just living your life instead of like, oh, I don't want to do it, wake up, just push one of the snooze buttons of the many, many clocks.
Right.
And I think having good people around you
Mm-hmm.
is important because if they may see that you start changing, they could have a conversation with you.
Yes, yes. So I try to think or check myself or and ask my friends and my family all the time that ego meter, like how much egoistic I become. Because after about selling 1 million copies, you may think like I'm better than anybody else, and I know a lot more than you do. But I try to find the right balance in me. When somebody comes up to me and say, "Wow, Ken, you're like a god. You changed my life. Thank you so much." So in my mind, I try to balance to a different way. You're terrible. You're not changing anybody. You're worth anything. And then I try to come back in. And if some people try to criticize me, it doesn't happen so much. But if somebody tries to rip me off or just criticize me, I try to come back and the other way. I'm good. I'm such a sweet person. And then I try to come back to the balance. So always I have to be in balance. Otherwise, your ego will become bigger as your bank account grows.
How do you decide who to mentor?
I always check if that person is thinking for others. Is he thinking of himself or is she thinking for herself? And then I'm not interested in helping them. But if they have a passion of helping other people, that's the kind of people I want to help too.
I love that. This has been great. This is amazing. Where can people find you?
So you can find all the information at kenhonda.com. And then I'm translating a lot of materials into English. And you can, for example, find out what your money personality type, either you're a spender,
Ah,
giver, money maker, indifferent type, or hippie type by answering questions for 5 minutes. So it's for free. I'm just translating a lot of fun stuff into English, and I have an online community. So you can find all the information there, kenhonda.com.
what is the membership? Because I saw the membership and that looks really interesting. So, what are some of the things that people join, that like learn when they join?
So I have a community. I have one of the largest online salons in Japan, and I studied the same thing for English audience. So it's called Arigato Living Community. People come in and just become friends, and we exchange about ideas of our pain, our glories of money. We share a lot about our childhood traumas. We cry, we laugh together, and it's so interesting because it's so international. We have many European participants, Indians, Africans, and North, Central, South America, a lot of Asians. So we share about like the fights that I had with my father or with my wife and stuff like that. It's so, wow, you do that in your country? And then you realize like all the negative beliefs in you could be very cultural.
It's true. We coach a lot of entrepreneurs, and there are so many beliefs that I don't want to say like break out of them,
Mhm.
but the simplest ones, like they're afraid to share what their business is about because they feel embarrassed to like market their business.
Yes.
Or they feel afraid to message someone because they are afraid to get rejected for an interview. Or they're afraid to ask for money, but they're in a business now. They're not an employee, so that's a problem.
Yes.
And there's just so many beliefs. So I think that membership is very important for people to know about. So we'll link it in the description for sure.
Thank you.